Welcome back to FM Storey for the run into the end of season 4. Things are going remarkably well this season. We've already retained the League Cup. We've made it to the quarter-final of the Europa Conference League. We made it to the semi-final of the Scottish Cup. And we're still in with a chance of finishing second in the league. So without further ado, let's get into the action. We're into the middle of April and we've got the Cup semi-final coming up against Rangers next. We have had a few problems with recordings in this episode, so it will probably just be the goals for this episode because the recording went haywire. Things have not gone massively well since the end of the last episode. We started with a really poor performance away at St Johnstone, lost the game 1-0. Just very out of character with everything else we've seen this season. We then went to Vienna for the first leg of the quarter-final and got off to a pretty bad start, but got ourselves back into the game. Came away with a 1-1 draw to give us a chance in the second leg. Then we went to Ibrox and got a great start. We were 1-0 up and then threw it away. Really poor performance after that. And then in the second leg of the quarter-final, we were flying. We managed to go ahead late on. They scored with practically the last kick of normal time. They scored an extra time, and then we ended up finishing with 10 men because of injuries, and just didn't have enough to see us into the next round. Although Maatsen somehow hit the post with practically the last kick of the game, which would have taken us to yet another penalty shootout this season. But it wasn't to be. We made it to the quarter-final, which I think, given what our expectations were at the start of the season, probably far exceeded what we were expecting to do. So the semi-final couldn't have gone much worse. We got off to an absolutely horrendous start, and although we managed to equalise, just playing with 10 men, we really kind of struggled to get any foothold in the game. The first goal was a penalty from Danilo after a foul by Tommy Doyle, which saw him sent off. Then we equalised with a header from Fabinho from an Ibrahimovic corner. At that point we were doing pretty well, but a second Danilo penalty, Panenka down the middle, put them in front, and then as we were pushing on, they drove forward with Ahmad, who squared it, and then Cifuentes coming onto the ball made it 3-1, and that was the end of our hopes in the Scottish Cup this season. The first penalty the Rangers scored saw us have Tommy Doyle sent off after 6 minutes, and it looked like it was a perfectly clean tackle. If it was just a penalty, then it shouldn't have been a red card. And I don't know why they sent him off, because they've now rescinded the ban, so he shouldn't have been sent off. But that's okay, because we just had to play 84 minutes with 10 men and a goal down because of the penalty. To say we're a bit miffed is a bit of an understatement. We've made it to the last game of the season, and it's a home game against Rangers. And considering the aim we had at the beginning of the episode was to try and finish above Rangers, I think the league table that you can see there kind of puts into perspective how bad our end of season's been. We were 3 points behind Rangers after 31 games. We're now 15 points behind them going into the last game of the season, and that could become 18 if they beat us. Again, we had an issue with the recording of that game, so it's likely just to be the goals that we see from that game, if there are any. So since the semi-final, things have continued in the same vein. We had a really disappointing performance away at Aberdeen. We were really struggling. We managed to pull a couple of goals back later on, but just never really at the races or not good enough to get anything from that game. We then went away to Dunfermline and put in a much better performance and came away with a 2-0 victory before going to Celtic, where again we were very, very poor and came away with a 2-0 loss. And then in a total Jekyll and Hyde kind of style, we went home to Hibs and absolutely hammered them and played them off the park and came away with a 3-0 victory. And so, as we said, going into that last game of the season, it's leaving us 15 points behind Rangers when we were only 3 behind them 6 games ago. And the final day of the season was an eventful game. And somehow when you look at those match stats, we managed to get hammered. But it was very eventful around half-time. They opened the scoring from Luka Jovic when Hale and Doyle combined just to let him waltz through, and he fired past Liam Kelly. We managed to go pretty much up the other end and equalise. Sin driving forward, ran all the way around the outside, and then somehow squeezed it past Butland at the near post to level it up. And then just after half time, they came forward. Ridvan in acres of space down the left hand side squared it. Jovic had a simple tap in. And then Lindstrom was given just all kinds of time to run, and somehow we just let him waltz through to tap it in. And then they went 4-1 up. Hernandez giving the ball to Guzman, us leaving Lindstrom in acres of space and a decent finish. And then we got a sort of late consolation goal with an Ibrahimovic penalty. Just too little too late, and we just didn't take the chances. I mean, 21 shots on goal, 10 on target. We had a much better XG, and yet we've been hammered 4-2. And that just sort of sums up this last month or so of the season. And there we have it, the end of another episode, the end of another season. And overall, I would say that was a pretty positive season. Obviously, it's slightly tainted by how badly we fell off in this last episode. But finished third again in the league. We've qualified for the Europa Conference League. We made it to the semi-final of the Scottish Cup. We retained the League Cup. And somehow we made it through to the quarterfinals of Europa Conference League. Looking forward to next season, I think what we might have to do is an emphasis on players that satisfy the homegrown rules, just because the registration for the Europa Conference League this season was a bit of a problem. But that's for next time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you then.